So good evening. We're in our 11th week of Rebbe Nachman's Outpouring of the Soul, and the chapter for this week is on simplicity. But before we go on, I want to say just a word or two, especially for people who may not be gathered here tonight in our immediate group, about why it is that we're studying all year long the teachings of this 18th century Hasidic rabbi. Why would a group of nominally Buddhist green meditators be reading such a book? And the reason is fairly simple. It is the only collection of teachings in any tradition that is devoted exclusively to the practice of Hitbodedut, which is the core practice that we use in green meditation. Hitbodedut literally means isolation, or to isolate oneself, or to be alone with God. Typically it's performed by oneself alone in nature, talking to God for up to an hour a day. But it has many, many different forms. It can take the form of silent meditation. It can take the form of repeating one word, like a mantra. It can be a free-form dialogue. It can be a silent scream, and we're simply feeling frustrated or blocked and unable to do more. It can simply be saying over and over again, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. We can be helpless. We can complain. We can pour everything out. The only rule is that we take the lid off of our minds and our lives and pour out whatever it is that is within us. So we do the same thing in our practice. It doesn't really matter whether we call it meditation or prayer. It's all the same practice, all the same tradition. And we don't limit ourselves to just one expression of that tradition. There are a lot of different sort of practices. What we've discovered is that green meditation can embrace them all, because it is in fact a much more ancient practice. This practice of spending some time alone every day to avail yourself of contact with the divine is the oldest practice there is. All the others are like branches and leaves off that single primordial trunk, that primordial tree, that original tree. Getting back to Rebbe Nachman and why we study this particular teaching is that despite the fact that he's, of course, quite Jewish, very, very rooted and very situated in that tradition, but somehow in becoming so fully, or desiring to become so fully what he is, or believes himself to be, he becomes fully human through this outpouring of the soul and this dialogue and this conversation with God. So he says about simplicity, chapter 11. The Rebbe was very fond of the simple worship of ordinary religious people. He liked very much when a person was able to recite the many optional prayers found in the larger prayer books recited by many simple people. On many occasions he told us to be careful to sing the Sabbath table hymns. He would become very upset and angry with those who thought themselves too sophisticated to make the effort to sing these table hymns at the Sabbath meals and at the close of the Sabbath. The same was true of other simple worship. The essence of Judaism is simplicity and absolute innocence without any sophistication. Before the Rebbe contracted the sickness that would take his life, he would sing the table hymns at the Sabbath meals at the close of the Sabbath. In other words, he would sing them himself. Now, this is a commentary on simplicity and specifically on simple practice. I think I've mentioned this story before, but I'll just tell it again very briefly because it's such a great story. There was once a man in Tibet who felt himself to be cursed because he and some other boys, when they were young, had killed a snake. snake could be a naga or a serpent god in Buddhism, which makes it very holy. So to kill a snake is potentially a very dire and potentially deadly karmic event. Sure enough, of the 4 boys, 3 of them died of leprosy, and only the 4th was left. And he was terrified that he too would be struck down by leprosy, and so he sought out a very powerful mantra to counteract the effect of this bad karma. And so he went to the local lama, but apparently the local lama was famous for charging a lot of money for very, very little, very weak teaching. Okay, so he would charge a lot and give you very little. He decided he couldn't afford it. And so he figured out that it was cheaper to travel to northern India to talk to a guru there. So he traveled there, and he had enough money to get there, and he met this guru who said, yes, I understand your problem, and I do have a secret mantra for you. So he led him through all kinds of preparations for this, and finally he said, all right, I'm going to tell it to you. The man said, yes, please, do, tell it. And the guru said, no, it's too secret, it's too precious, it can't be spilled, it can't be overheard by anyone, it must be transmitted in a very, very secret way, so you only hear it yourself. And so, lest he risk the mantra somehow diverting into the ears of another, he took a long hollow bamboo tube and he put it into the disciple's ear, and the guru whispered into the tube the mantra, which was Om Mani Padme Hum, a 6-syllable mantra, national mantra of Tibet. Now this is something that every Tibetan child is born saying. Like, you know, the traditional wisdom is that a Tibetan child says Om Mani Padme Hum either before or at the same time they say Mama. Okay, so everyone knows it. It's carved on stones everywhere. There could not possibly be a less secret mantra than Om Mani Padme Hum. And so he's shocked and dismayed. He spent a lot of money, gone to a lot of effort to get here, and he gets here and he's told it's just Om Mani Padme Hum. And of course he demonstrates to the guru his, doubts that this is secret or powerful. And the guru scolds him severely and then puts him through further trials, at the end of which he admits and realizes that truly it is a secret mantra. It's secret because it's revealed only within the heart. Mantra that you see carved on the stones or that you hear another speak is not the same as the mantra that penetrates from within your heart and awakens your own inner simplicity. It's like these Sabbath hymns that Rebbe Nachman is talking about. So simplicity is simply taking a simple practice and doing it simply. Taking a simple practice and doing it simply. Now, a simple practice is one that is sustainable. So it's one that you can actually do from moment to moment, from day to day, and from year to year. It's also something that isn't so involved or so complicated that some days you can't do it and some days you can. In other words, if it's an elaborate puja, then it's not a simple practice, because sometimes you're going to be able to do it and sometimes you're not. A simple practice is one that can be performed instantaneously, like returning the mind to the breath, or counting one's breath from 1 to 10 and then starting over at 1, or reciting either aloud or internally a mantra like Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, or Namu Amidabhats, Namu Amidabhats, Namu Amidabhats, or even sun salutations. Simple practice done simply from day to day, year to year, is like the acorn that falls from the branch of an oak tree to the ground and produces another oak tree, which then in turn produces another oak tree, which becomes part of that sustainable, balanced cycle which we embrace and we participate in. Our spiritual practice, the simplest way of understanding it, is a way of doing what a tree does. Doing what a tree does.